So I wanted to say something a little bit more about what we talked about last week. Um, there were a few things that I didn't mention that I wanted to mention. Um, as you remember, I said that what I was saying about the process of meditation, I was, I was thinking of it in a sort of like mega, let's say, not loving kindness way, large way, the process of meditation over 20 years or over 30 years, right? I wasn't thinking about it necessarily in the say like in one sit, but over the course of the years that we sit, the mind does slowly settle, and the thoughts begin to settle. Thank God. And I mean, really, thank the good Lord. And really, I promise you, to some extent, it happens over time. It's not like it necessarily happens, say, like in the 6 weeks of the beginner's course, right? It's like it's possible at the end of the 6 weeks, your mind is going faster than it was in the beginning. But the mind begins to settle, the mind begins to still, and to some extent, we have to have the patience, because without patience, we're really kind of in trouble, and faith. If you don't believe that meditation does still the mind and quiet the mind, then, how in the hell are you going to say, well, I'm going to do it for the next 20 years, but I don't have any faith that it's going to happen? No, that won't happen. You won't do it. So it does require faith. It does require patience. So then, as I said, I said to you last Sunday, which was a week ago, that's a joke, Eric. Just to show that I know, I still know. I watched myself, Eric uploaded the talk last week, and I pulled that bowl like that at least 30 times, and I have this, I'm doing this. It's pitiful. It's like ADHD, from hell. And then how is it that, the bell rings and I'm just still? It's the miracle. But when I am doing this, you can really see the ADHD. It's very clear. What was I talking about? The second stage of what we're doing is, it's like a rocket, like rocket going up towards orbit. I mean, when the rocket separates, it's so crucial. It's when you start separating from the content. I didn't put it that way last time. But let's just say that most of us are the content for much of our lives. And it's not that people are, you could be a non-meditator and still be quite advanced. I'm not, I have friends who have not meditated and they are very advanced in certain ways. But anyway, but the classical event in meditation is that you start getting to the point where you are more the observer of the zoo in your head than a participant. Hello. Is that not huge? I mean, in other words, you're not really necessarily part of the zoo anymore. There's to some extent you're watching it. So at the Forest Refuge one morning, and this was like maybe I'd been there about 6 weeks. My mind was in that that still place that I was talking about. Right, it was quiet, and I had a cup of coffee. I'd had a cup of Pete's French roast, which I took with me and ran out of. And unbeknownst to anybody here, Teresa, God bless her, mailed me another pound. I emailed her, and I said, Teresa, she mailed me a pound of French roast. So I'm walking from my room towards the meditation hall, and the mind is just very still. And I hear this voice. say, I just love coffee. I mean, it was my voice. Right? Well, there was an observer. It was the strangest experience. It was so strange. I mean, in other words, there's this witness that just heard this, saw this voice, this silly little voice say, I just love coffee. So it just went, the thought just went, psst. It was like, it was a precious moment. It sounds, maybe a lot of it is lost in translation, but I mean, there was just a witness to this thought, and the thought was just, it's like so silly. And it was a wonderful moment. So I had moments like that occurred more and more and more, where there would just be a witnessing of just this thought. This is not like a big deal, right? I mean, it is a big deal, but I mean, it didn't make me feel that I was awake or enlightened, but it did. It's a different thing. It's a different thing to have this thought. I'm going, whatever. I'm going to blah blah blah, right? Whatever your thought is, I'm going to. But to have this quiet witness that just looks at it right there. Oh my goodness. So the third one is the one that I wanted to say something else about. I didn't flesh it out for you last week. I said it to the beginner's course. So this was I have my own story that I've told in Dharma talks many times. It's actually where the phrase "it's your mind, stupid" came from. It's where I came up with that. And I'm going to wait, and I'll tell you that some other time. But it was kind of charming and pleasant to me because I heard one of the teachers share her story. And her story I'm going to share with you. So she had been meditating for some time. She was at a 1-month retreat, which means, when you get to a 1-month retreat, you've been doing this for a while. Maybe for years, I can't remember. But she was along the way to actually becoming a teacher. And she said that she had this recurring thought at the retreat. It would just start sort of like she's sitting and she's kind of quiet, minding her own business. So let's say the mind is quiet, and now there's the observer, right? The second stage. And so the second stage is she's watching this thought come up, and she said it was like, you are stupid. You'll never learn how to do this. Very disturbing, right? And so she said she tried to work with it, trying to note that. That's just thinking, noting. She was using all of these skillful means trying to work with it. But she said it went on and on and on, almost to like an obsession. And she began to become aware that she had thought this about herself all of her life. You're stupid. And she said she realized that it was just self-loathing. I mean, it just would crawl all over her, and she would maybe go to her room and cry. And she worked with it, but she said it came back and it came back. Now, to some extent, I think that the meditation itself allowed that to come up, right? I mean, in other words, she was no longer capable of repressing it or pushing it down. One day, she was walking, and here it came again. And she said, suddenly, she realized that it was just a thought. That's the big one. That's the big one. She realized, she saw it, that it was a thought. It was not her, thinking. It was a thought. And she said that it lost its power in that moment, right? It lost its sting. It's not, she said, it's not that it didn't come back, but it never had that sting. It never grabbed her the way it had always grabbed her all of her life. I remember sitting there thinking, right, as a psychotherapist, I thought, my God, that would put us out of business in a nanosecond. We would be on the street or going back to school and learning, or perhaps go to meditation school. So she said that over the years, of course, it just finally vanished. A feeling of self-loathing, which is a thought, right? It's a feeling, but it's translated in the mind as a thought, can be seen as nothing but a thought, as empty of self. When she saw it, when there was no me in it, right? Me meaning it didn't have her in the thought. She was free of it. And I said this to the beginners today, and I will say it to you. And this is I really believe this with all of my heart. You could sit here from now and 20 years from now, 2032. Is that? Oh, what are we? 2033, was it? No, is that 20 years? You could sit here for 20 years with me, and I'll still be here in 20 years, and never have that experience. Not once. Not once in 20 years. And then it could happen to you. And this was worth it. This 20 years will have been worth it. I promise you. And to some extent, some of you, I hope, have already had this experience. But that's freedom. That's true freedom. When you see that it's just a thought. Everything in your head, they're just thoughts. They're not you. And you don't have to give any of them power. None of them have to have power over you. Any feeling that you have about who you are, or any thought that you have about who you are. When that goes, you begin to realize that what you are is what I said during the sit. Your luminous awareness. You're brilliant. And that's all you are. It's enough, isn't it? I would think. But we are so locked in this movie and this story about ourselves, and we are so hypnotized. We're so hypnotized by the conditioned feelings and thoughts that have, crystallized since we were little. What our parents said about us, what our society said about us, what our peers said about us, what we said about us, year after year after year, becomes crystallized, and it becomes what we think is reality. So that's where meditation can take you. It can take you to this place where, you look at you see a thought. It's just nothing. It's just a thought.